When it was released, many did not understand whether the film Jacob's Ladder was horror or psychological thriller, but given Adrian Lyne's previous work, Fatal Attraction for example, it's possible that viewers were expecting something along the same vein of a story arc like Dan Gallagher's in the former. However, it is a film that has garnered multiple interpretations, mostly due to the imagery throughout the film, its cerebral source material, but it's really a film about a man struggling to let go. So let's dive into Jacob's Ladder. Now for this video, we're going to get right into it, so let me go ahead and explain how the video is going to be structured. We're going to be spending a lot of this video talking about the character of Jacob Singer and also the overall ordeal itself, but the ordeal will come up more in the second part of the video, and then we will get to the interpretations and what the film was really about more towards the end. By the way, there's also going to be a lot of emphasis placed on Jacob's girlfriend Jezebel, who he seems to be, let's just say, in a state of purgatory, which of course has been masked by, and you see it early in the film, by the word ecstasy. There's kind of a bit right there in the subway station scene where you see ecstasy. A lot of people love to focus on the word hell, which is the first thing Jacob sees when he wakes up from his first dream. But it's the word ecstasy that, for the most part, I think was the actual theme of the film. It's ecstasy that ultimately turns into hell, but we'll get to that over the course of the video. Now, with that out of the way, if you guys can, please hit the like button. Please consider subscribing. I'm also going to want to get a comment from you guys. I want you guys to tell me what you think about the video essay and also the film itself. And let's talk about Jacob's Ladder. Jacob Singer is a Vietnam veteran who got married before the war, and not only did he get married before the war, he also had a family before the war. He had 3 sons, one of which that he had lost. Of course, that child was played by Macaulay Culkin, pre-Home Alone Macaulay Culkin, by the way. But moving on, he joins the army, goes to Vietnam, is in the Mekong Delta, and there's an extremely bad firefight, an ambush of sorts, an attack, that keeps recurring throughout the film, that keeps recurring as a nightmare for Jacob. A nightmare that he eventually wakes up from, and of course you get that famous subway scene. Now, I want to say this really quick. Many people believe that this film was an indirect inspiration to the Silent Hill series. I'll link some stuff in the description box about that, but there's definitely a lot of similarities to that particular video game franchise. Still, this is a recurring nightmare for Jacob, and he wakes up in 1970s New York with a girlfriend who seems to be very, very much into him, with a job at the Postal Service, which, by the way, is a good job. And you might think that he's actually, quite frankly, nothing, but the point is that that nothing is still something in his world, because he's not that different than me or you. Working a job, living in the city, he's got a chiropractor. Things seem to be on the up and up for Jacob, even though it seems to be somewhat insignificant. But then some very strange things happen. For example, his doctor at the VA suddenly dies. There's also other little bits, like, for example, he's almost hit by a car, and you see Michael here, who basically acts as a sort of a archangel or guardian angel type for Jacob. We'll get to him a little bit later, but the most important figure in Jacob's life outside of Jezebel and his kids, who Jacob seems to not have anything to do with anymore, seeing how it is that he has moved on with his life post-Vietnam, is his chiropractor, Louis. But things sort of get strange for Jacob the minute that he goes to a house party with his girlfriend, and you get this psychic scene, and during that psychic scene we get this little bit of information.
Oh, it's not funny. See, according to this, you're already dead.
Obviously living and breathing, but yet somehow or another he's dead. Something's obviously off with this, but eventually Jacob sees this girl on the floor dancing her ass off, but notices this demonic-like figure dancing with her, and when asked to dance himself, he proceeds to have a crash out and eventually finds himself in a tub covered in ice. Having the same dream from the time that he was in Vietnam, and also a dream of his previous family, things are obviously a little bit off with this. Now, I want to state that if you have not seen this film, then no actual plot explanation is needed, but still, spoiler, and it's pivotal in explaining Jacob's ordeal overall situation, and it's also very important for the interpretations of later on in the video. But Jacob, knowing something is off, ultimately investigates. Now, I want to go ahead and state this, that there are other little things in the film that I may not have gone further into detail over, but I'm going to go ahead and go through now so that way you guys can kind of see exactly how weird this entire ordeal is for him. Earlier in the film, he tries to go see his doctor at the VA. The doctor is dead. You get the impression with the group that's there that this is actually a therapist, but still the doctor is suddenly gone. I haven't mentioned much about Louis, his chiropractor, who kind of serves as a best friend, sort of father figure, but of course you find out a little bit later on as sort of a guide, as sort of a guardian angel type figure, but we'll get to him momentarily. Still, this entire ordeal makes you wonder what is actually going on. Ultimately, Jacob meets with his friend Paul, a man that he served with in Vietnam, and Paul tells Jacob about some of the stuff that he is going through as well. And let's just say that Paul's end ends in a very, very odd, weird way that might make you think that maybe there's some form of government conspiracy going on, but Paul dies when his car blows up, and you see a little bit of that religious imagery in the film, with the coin just magically disappearing right before Jacob could grab it. I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video, but still. At Paul's funeral, Jacob meets with some of his fellow comrades from that ambush, from that attack in the Mekong Delta, and they ultimately decide to go meet with an attorney to find out what's actually going on. Were they experimenting on what actually happened? But eventually his buddies kind of leave him out to dry, and Jacob goes to the attorney, played by Jason Alexander, who also played George Costanza in Seinfeld, Jason Shigiri, and yeah.
Bizarro story and demand that I check it out? All right, fine, I did. Now, I don't know what kind of a fool you take me for, but you have used and abused me, sir. I don't like it.
Used you?
That's right, I checked with the Army's Bureau of Information. You never even went to Vietnam.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means that you and your friends are wacko. You were all discharged on psychological grounds after some war games in Thailand.
War games in Thailand?
Don't you see what they're doing?
That's a lie. We were in Da Nang, for God's sake. You gotta believe me.
Go fuck yourself, singer.
Basically told that his time in Vietnam was a load of crap, Jacob leaves angrily, and he is picked up by two people who appear to be federal agents, and after the struggle, Jacob finally breaks out of the vehicle, and just to show you how kind of jacked up and how morbid this world is, lying on his back, injured and in pain, Jacob is robbed by a Santa. It is from here that we get the famous hospital scene where Jacob is taken in and ultimately lowered to the basement of the facility, and you see all the insane imagery around him, making you think that maybe Jacob is in fact in hell. We'll get to that in the interpretation section, but still, Jacob is said to be tortured. And in kind of a callback to what happened earlier in the film with the psychic, we then get this line which kind of confirms in a way what the psychic was saying about Jacob to be true.
Get me out of here.
Where do you want to go? Home. This is your home. You're dead.
Dead? No. Oh, I just hurt my back. I'm not dead.
What are you then?
I'm alive.
Then what are you doing here?
Obviously, there's some extremely weird stuff going on here that Jacob cannot figure out. But he wakes up in the hospital with his wife, his previous wife, and his two living sons, basically assuring him that everything will be okay and that he, for the most part, needs to come home. But it's right here that we get to Louis. So let's talk about Louis. It is with Louis, played expertly by Danny Aiello, where we actually get the answers to Jacob's ordeal and what's really going on.
Dying, and you're holding on. You'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels, freeing you from the earth. It's just a matter of how you look at it, that's all.
So let's go back just a little bit. As I said earlier, Jacob really isn't that special in the grand scheme of things, but his life in purgatory is actually great for him. It's, as mentioned before, it's a type of ecstasy. He has a girl that is very much into him, a good job, of course, the post office, as mentioned before, where he gets a lot of overtime. He lives in New York City, which at that time in the 1970s was the dream of so many. It's still the dream of many people today, even though obviously things have changed. He's in a world full of angels and demons, and we must decipher which is which. As Louis had said, they're really angels trying to free him. That's what's really going on here, but who and what are the angels of this story? Well, it's not who you think. You see, Jacob getting betrayed by his comrades, getting done over by Geary, isn't really him getting betrayed or done over. He just can't really, how do I say this? He can't exactly figure it out yet. Naturally, he would think to himself that maybe Jezebel is an angel, but in reality, she's not, as I'll explain momentarily. But I want to get back to the perceived demons. So let's talk about these angels. So his comrades, they stand him up. They basically leave him out to dry when it comes to Geary, who, if you guys remember from earlier in the video, had told him that your experience for the most part was a load of crap and that you were BSing us. He says to Jacob, "You were never even in Vietnam and you're basically pulling my leg." Jacob is astounded and he has no idea what is going on. But this right here is designed to get Jacob to look further into what's going on, and eventually you get to Michael, who explains to Jacob exactly what was going on. I'll play some of it for you.
Synthesizing mind-altering drugs. Not the street stuff. They had us isolating special properties. The dark side, okay? They wanted a drug that increased aggressive tendencies. They were scared, you know, they were worried. They figured you guys were too soft, not fighting up to your potential. They wanted something to stir you up, make you mad, you know, tap into your anger. And we did it. Most powerful thing I ever saw. Even a bad trip, and believe me, I've had my share, do not compare to the fury of the ladder.
The men were experimented on. They were used, they were abused, they were test subjects, as Michael explains it. And by the way, you see more of Michael in the film around Jacob, not just the car scene at the beginning of the film, but also in the scene when Paul is killed as well. This right plays heavily into the theme about how it is that it's a movie about the experimentation on Vietnam veterans, and there is a small element to that, and I'll link some stuff in the description box, but I do not feel that it is the predominant theme of this film, even though there's a tagline at the end discussing this. But moving forward, all of his comrades ultimately kill each other. It was the drug that was being taken, but ultimately Jacob ends up going back to his old apartment, where he starts to have more and more visions from his past with his wife, his past with his 2 sons that are now alive, and also the son that he lost. Now, I understand the point about the song, but this entire situation was designed to get him to the point to where he could let go. There's even more here at the very end of the deleted scene that I'll get to momentarily, but still the point is this. The people that Jacob believes are the demons, they're actually the angels trying to save him. While real Jacob is being moved out of the combat zone to basically a MASH unit to get operated on, to get worked on, Purgatory Jacob, on the other hand, thinks that he is going through some form of hell, when in reality that's not the case. It's just purgatory, just somewhere in the middle. However, that does not mean that his soul cannot go to hell, as I'll explain here momentarily, but think back to the very first word that he saw when he awoke: hell. And then, of course, also ecstasy. As if to say that it's trying to say that hell is where you're going to be going. And of course, there's also the sign right beside it talking about the city of New York and how it is that you'll never be bored. It's a city that, quite frankly, can swallow your soul. And of course, to go on top of that, it's also a place where your desires are almost like ecstasy, which is exactly what Jacob seems to be living in. It's supposed to be a type of ecstasy that Jacob is living in, but obviously, as said before, it's purgatory, and it kind of brings us back to that first word that Jacob sees on a sign when he wakes up from his first dream, and obviously that little thing that's slithering beneath the legs of that woman on the train. But I always think about the sign next to it basically saying that this right here is the city that you will never be bored in. But it is the things and the enmities of that city that could, in fact, drag him to hell. Which is where we start to talk about Jezebel. So let's talk about it.
How'd I ever get involved with such a fucking ninny?
You sold your soul, remember?
Yeah? For what?
From ninny to...
Anybody in there? Anybody home?
As pointed out from earlier in the video, Jezzy, when we first meet her, she appears to be very, very much into Jacob, pretty much in love with him. However, when I look at the tub scene and I see exactly how desperate she is to save him, it's almost like this right here is like the pinnacle to show you exactly how she really feels about Jacob. However, I can't help but come away with this and say, what was the real reason for this? Like I said before, when we first meet Jezebel in the apartment scene, she seems, once again, like she's very, very much into Jacob. However, is she really? Well, even though not every single scene is featured here in the B-roll footage, because it's really hard to get a hold of every single scene from this film, I just want to go ahead and kind of go through this very quickly. So she brings up the fact that Jacob's son Eli stopped by with the last of the pictures of his family, and she referred to him as the fat one. Almost dismissive, and as if to say she doesn't want to acknowledge his previous family, and there are selfish reasons behind this, and you see this with her burning the photos. His memories of his kids, I mean, this was kind of a crappy thing to do, even if it is painful for Jacob to look at, but let's go back just a little bit further. So, when the two were talking about his sons, especially Eli, he brings up the fact that the name Eli, after Jezebel asked what kind of name it was, she said it was a biblical one. A lot like Jacob, whose name is a biblical name. As a matter of fact, the name of the film comes from the story of Jacob and his ladder. I won't go too much into this, but I do want to point this out. The name Jezebel, of course, comes from the story of Jezebel and Ahab and what was going on in Israel at that time. She wasn't exactly a good person. She was actually quite demonic. That's where the term Jezebel spirit comes from. When he looks at the photos of the son that he lost, she calls him that one. Is that the one that died? Almost as if to say it was somewhat dismissively and not so much more with actual interest to know exactly what happened, what actually ails Jacob. I mean, it seems a lot more throughout the film that she wants to control him more than actually love him. I mean, if she did, she'd encourage Jacob to sort of confront the grief, keep the photos, and of course she'd allow the photos to stay and not burn the memories. But I mean, that's kind of her purpose. She is designed to make him do stupid things, make bad decisions, and of course fall into the temptations of the city itself and ultimately take him to hell. More on that in a minute. But the hospital scene, for the most part, kind of confirms that she is very, very much the demon of this story. She's one of many demons, but she is the main one. Jacob just doesn't think about this because he's blinded by sex and love. Or lust, which is maybe something he might not have gotten in his first marriage, which I think it's pretty obvious that Jacob, before going to Vietnam, for the most part was trying to live a Christian life. We don't really know exactly what he did before the war, but we do know that he has a PhD. This is mentioned in scenes with Louis.
I think she still loves you.
I don't think so.
She doesn't stop talking about you. That's love, Jake. I think you should go back now.
She threw me out, remember?
Problem is, she spent 6 years getting a PhD and then went to work for the post office.
Well, can I tell you? After Nam, I didn't want to think anymore.
Any other brain but yours, I'd agree. Now relax. And relax, this is going to be a little strong. Attaboy. Attaboy.
I mean, you come away thinking to yourself that Jacob was close to the actual age of Tim Robbins, the actor who portrayed him in this film, a man in his early 30s. Still, getting back to Jezebel, after the scene where Jacob gets the truth from Michael, Jacob, and while I do not have the full bits here, he enters a cab, goes to his old home, and this is where he reflects. However, before the reflection, there's a deleted scene that I was able to get access to. Funny how much deleted material you can get for this film. And he's fighting with another presence. He's fighting with what appears to be yet another demonic force, and that force is revealed to be Jezebel. And said demonic spirit that he lays in bed with, that he lusts after, is going to ultimately be his undoing, and it's going to carry him to hell. Now, there's one more thing that I want to say before we move forward and close down the video, and it's this. Louis, obviously, from what you guys heard there, knows Jacob's first wife. And Jacob, when he got back home from Vietnam, he just wanted to fully decompress and not think about things. You get the impression that they had already agreed to end the marriage before he joined the army, which is kind of strange why he would join at such a late age, but I don't think that's here nor there. The point is, Louis is trying to tell him what's actually good, what's been good in his life, what you should actually be around. Even though there was also a little bit in there where he said that, no wonder why you guys' marriage failed. It could have been a situation where it is that Jacob was very young, she was very young, and they weren't very mature, and now that they've kind of grown apart, they may actually be a little bit more mature. Still, I figure I would point that out because I think that Louis' other purpose is to confirm to Jacob, look, your marriage was actually working, it was a good thing, and what you have now is actually not good for you. I just figure I would say that before we get to the final part of the video, so moving forward. There's many additional interpretations about this film, and I keep on saying the word purgatory over and over again, and I know that you guys are probably getting upset because I'm definitely saying it a lot, but I want to throw this out here. I talked about Jezebel dragging Jacob to hell, so it brings me back to the scene involving Paul. And there's also this sequence where he has a Bible in his hand and he's saying none of this works. It's a man that doesn't really have any faith. And then you see Michael inside the actual pool hall in the bar itself, as if to say he is watching Paul. But I don't think he's watching Paul for the purposes of taking Paul out, really, to tell you the truth, because he's going to be saved or anything like that. I think the real reason why Paul is there is to watch over Jacob, not Paul, because Paul himself could be somewhat of a corrupted soul or a corrupted spirit in this case. I mean, think about this really quick. The Greek tradition, and I want somebody to comment in the comment section because I'm kind of going on the fly with this one here, of coins being placed over the eyes is designed to pay the toll fee to get across the land of the dead. Somebody please correct me in the comment section, but still, coins on the eyes of the dead is something that is done in old Greek tradition. You see it in other films such as Troy and other films where Greek mythologies are portrayed. But still, the coin disappears, like it takes off before Jacob can even grab it before Paul dies in the car accident, well, in the explosion. It makes you think that maybe Jacob was meant to also be involved in this as well, hence why the coin suddenly just took off. Maybe it's Michael going out of his way to protect Jacob more here rather than protecting Paul. I mean, the fact that the Bible that Paul has in his hands, the symbolism, is not working tells me that he is a man of very, very little faith. And he's obviously shaken, but he can't seem to break through. Where Jacob, on the other hand, is kind of being brought back to God, kind of being brought back to his faith. As said before, the character of Jezebel was obviously a demonic figure that is meant to corrupt Jacob's soul a lot more than what has already been corrupted, and Jacob is sort of fighting back against this. As said before, the true angels of this film are actually Louis, Michael, and also, to go on top of that, even the rest of the guys in his squad who up and abandoned him, and even Gary to a certain extent, who lets him know that his experiences in Vietnam were not exactly real. Or that he didn't really go to Vietnam. Yeah, it seems to me like those right there are the actual true angels of this film, and everything that they're doing is directing Jacob to the next step. So that way, at the end, he can sort of let go and accept what is and go up the stairwell or the ladder with his son, and to heaven he goes, and his suffering ends. And this way is sort of compounded or confirmed on the operating table when Jacob dies. I mean, just listen to the doctors here.
He's gone.
He looks kind of peaceful, the guy. Put up a hell of a fight, though.
That peaceful look on Jacob's face is acceptance. He's finally accepted it all, and now he's in heaven with his son. But you guys tell me what you think. I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on this video, your thoughts on the film as well. Tell me if you disagree, or tell me if there's something that I'm missing. With that being said, if you guys can, please hit the thumbs up button. If you guys can, like I asked before, please comment. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Let's make this channel a lot bigger. And I'll see you guys later.